Hello and welcome, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to do a quick audio test. If you can please type in the Q&A box if you can hear me all right. Thanks so much. Hello, and welcome to our second webinar, Accelerating Your Transition to Remote Instruction, of our series, Adapting to COVID-19, Higher Ed in the Transition to Online Learning. We developed this for college and university faculty and staff to learn tips, tricks, and best practices for this accelerated transition to teaching online and working remotely. Thank you for joining us during these trying times. We hope this webinar series is a useful, valuable resource. Please connect with us using the hashtags MCCA webinar, COVID-19, and Better Together, and visit our website for updates. In today's session, each speaker will give a brief presentation about remote instruction, and then we will open it up for questions, which you can type in the Q&A box. Our presenters today are Jack Lee Hayes from State Fair Community College, Stephanie Witcher from Crowder College, Angela Walker from Moberly Area Community College, and Barbie Underwood from Moberly Area Community College. Angela Walker is an associate professor of mathematics at Moberly Area Community College and currently serving as the STEM mathematics coordinator. She earned her Master's of Science in Mathematics from Texas A&M. Over the past 10 years, she has developed many online and virtual courses and is currently teaching Calculus 1 and differential equations virtually, in addition to other online and face-to-face courses. She occasionally moonlights in instructional technology and enjoys reading in her free time. I will now hand it over to Angela.
Good morning, everybody. One thing you may not know from my bio is I was also an online student. I completed all my master's work online, so I have that perspective as well. So let's just jump in here. I think overall we need to remember just to keep things simple. Our students didn't sign up for an online class, so even those of us with a lot of experience in online instruction, we have students that are scrambling to learn new things. So I think we should really think about requiring any extra equipment and avoid that if possible. There are tons of offers flooding our email of offers to try things for free and try this software, and I really think we need to limit that new technology and try and keep our classes as close to what they were before as possible. And then also remember that our students need flexibility, and some things that we're sometimes not aware of is the need for to consider that they don't always have good internet. A lot of our students in MACC are actually dependent on our computers in the LARC and our learning centers, and they use our internet, so when they're at home, they don't have great internet connection. I actually had to get special permission to come to my office because I live 10 minutes from campus and don't have a good enough internet to do this web conferencing. So I think we need to have those things in the back of our mind as we're trying to adapt these courses and to really be flexible with students. And I'm going to talk primarily about moving tests online, but I just wanted to mention, because I am a math person, most of what I do in the classroom is writing on a whiteboard, showing problems in there. In the webinar on Wednesday, I know that they went over several ways to record, but there's also some really nice just whiteboard apps to do a whiteboard recording rather than trying to record within Zoom or somewhere else. That might be just a little easier on us that don't have great internet access, because you can record offline and upload those later. So you might want to check some of those out. But as far as testing, the biggest questions I had in working with some of our department is, how I give a paper test, how do I move that online quickly? And I think most of us have access to an LMS system that has quizzing features. So I think the fastest way to do that is to simply build a quiz in your LMS using that paper test that you were going to hand out as a reference. I find it faster to just create free response essay type questions rather than trying to figure out how to get the computer to auto-grade anything. And so I just take that test question that I have on paper, I type it into the LMS, and I do that for all my test questions, and I just leave them as essay. And I just tell my students, you're going to write that problem down on paper, you're going to work it just like as if I had handed you that paper in class. Show me your work, enter your final answer in the computer as best you can, because sometimes math doesn't type in great. And then I create a place at the end of the test for students to upload a scan of their written work. There's a lot of free apps for that. Cam Scanner is one I'm familiar with, and our students have used with great success. And it actually really creates a really nice PDF version of that handwritten work just using the camera on their phone. And then we just give our students some simple directions that, hey, this is just like a paper test, work it on paper, and then we give them a time limit for getting that work submitted to us. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, but if there's questions later, I'll be happy to answer them. And then the second question I've dealt with the most is, well, how do we uphold the integrity of our courses? In seat, I know who's doing what. I can proctor those. And we have online proctoring in our classes that were designed to be online. And a lot of those companies have offered free online proctoring, and everybody's like, okay, we'll do that. But I think we need to be aware those online proctoring solutions require specific equipment, webcams, which students may not have, specific devices sometimes. Chromebooks are a little limited, and a lot of our students have Chromebooks, or they're trying to do things from their phones at this point. And so our department chose to eliminate online proctoring actually in all of our courses, just because even our online students come in and use our labs and things like that. And so we talked about, okay, well, how do we protect the integrity of this test? And so some of the things that we talked about was we're just going to assume that students have access to their notes. So we're going to use some time limits so that they can't look everything up or they'll run out of time. I think it's important to give a testing window. Normally in my virtual classes where students log in synchronously with me, everybody takes their test at the same time, but with changing student schedules and they may be having to drive to a parking lot to get internet, I plan to give them a window to test in, which is not obviously what we would do ideally, but in this situation I think that's going to ease stress on students to give them some flexibility there. And then we're going to require students to show, we're not going to accept just an answer. I need to see your work. And I think maybe adjusting a couple of questions to have them show some critical thinking, such as, maybe give them a problem that's worked out, ask them to find the mistake and correct it, or something that's not just going to be something they can Google really quickly to show that they actually are understanding. But again, above all, I think really just flexibility and reminding your students, you know what, we're all figuring this out. So especially on that first time that they're taking a test or a quiz online, to give them some grace, or maybe put a practice assignment up that doesn't really count for anything, or just as a homework grade or something, to give them a chance to run through the process so they know what to expect before they take a quiz. My daughter actually took a quiz in the parking lot using the Wi-Fi here and had some trouble and panicked. So it would have been really nice for her to have had a practice assignment first. So if you have a little time to do that, that's probably going to ease the stress on your students. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I want to give plenty of time for questions, so I'll pass it off to the next presenter.
Thank you so much. Stephanie is our next presenter, and she has been an English instructor at Crowder College for 7 years. She serves as the dual credit English instructor and has taught online for 5 years. Recently, she served on an academic affairs rapid response team to provide professional development to instructors on our 6 campuses to assist their transition to online instruction. Besides teaching, she spends time with her husband, Daniel, who is an essential employee in IT at a local university, and her 2 children, Scott, 3, and Elsie, 7. She's also continuing her doctorate in higher education leadership from Maryville University. It's all yours, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to join you today. I want to talk about transitioning to English online. What I have found over the last couple of weeks, being a lead instructor, we did offer professional development across our campuses down here in Southwest Missouri for Crowder. And I found that there were really 2 major areas of focus that teachers had questions about. And so, first of all, in the areas of student success, how can we help them transition online successfully, because they didn't sign up for this. I will say my students are flex students, so they already had a little bit of experience with online courses, but what I have found works best for students is to make sure that you very clearly write out what your expectations are for your assignments and what those due dates are, because unlike being in the classroom where we can see each other face to face, online sometimes those dates become very unclear for students. So every Monday I'm posting, here's what's due this week, here is the date that it is due by, and trying to make sure that I'm putting that in multiple places in the LMS. We use Blackboard, so in Blackboard. And I still get email questions from my students about those specific due dates. So I'm also really encouraging my students to get a planner, because unlike when they're in class and they can hear, the reminders about due dates, they may not get that online. So I'm really encouraging them to get a planner. Inside the LMS, we're encouraging all of our instructors to organize everything by weeks, because they need to know where to find things, and we need to make it clear and streamlined for them so they're not trying to find everything everywhere in these classes. So by organizing everything in folders by weeks, they know this is just what I need to do for this week. What I've found is my students are still feeling really overwhelmed by all of this, and so telling them just focus on this week, and this is what you need to do this week, has really brought some clarity for them. Right now, in order to give my students feedback, I am utilizing the discussion board. And so what I am doing is putting inside the discussion board, creating different threads and putting them in groups. And I'm trying to replicate the group work we would have done together if we had been in class. Of course, in English classes, we spend a lot of time in editing groups and sharing, our ideas about papers together. And so I'm still trying to replicate the group atmosphere that I have in my classroom, and I'm doing that through the discussion board. I do know some of my colleagues they're utilizing Teams. So if you are a Microsoft school, Teams works well. Also, if you're a Google school, Google Hangouts is an option for you as well. But my students really still want that group atmosphere that they're used to having. Again, going with that clarity of expectation and due dates, I keep repeating the due dates in multiple places. They're still feeling very unsure about themselves, and so that gives them that clarity and that confidence. The last thing that I took away from my very first Zoom meeting with some of my students is they desperately want to see their instructors' faces. They're so used to seeing us. And so I am trying to find all different kinds of ways so that they can still connect to me and see my face. So 2 things that I have found that really helps, of course, is Zoom, and I know a lot of you are doing Zoom or Google Hangouts. And honestly, the first time we Zoomed, we really didn't even talk about class. We just talked about life, and they wanted to visit with their classmates. They wanted to visit with me. I kind of showed them around. This is my home, and they got to meet my kids. And it was actually a really, really good experience because I know a lot of my students are feeling quite a bit of anxiety right now about everything that's happening. Crowder has decided to close for the whole semester. So, you know, there's some struggles and some anxiety about that. So letting them see my face, here's where we are, we're all in this, has seemed to really help. In fact, one of my male students who I've had for 2 semesters said, Ms. Wisher, I kind of miss you. And so it was good to share that with them. So we actually have a regular once-a-week Zoom meeting. It's every Monday night from 9 to 10 o'clock. And I have quite a few students joining me. And to be very honest, a lot of times we're just talking about life. Also, to record my lectures, I'm using Loom. It's a free product from Google. What it allows you to do is to screen share as well as record your face, and all you need is a webcam. It's very simple to share that into Blackboard or Canvas, but it's very streamlined. It's very simple to use. So Loom is what we're teaching a lot of our teachers to use, but it's just another opportunity for students not only to hear your voice in a lecture, but also to see your face, and that seems to be really important to them. One last thing about teaching specifically English online, I am working to build rubrics. You know, one thing we struggle with in English online is offering great feedback on papers. It's very difficult to grade papers, you know, essays online. Of course, we're all in research paper mode right now. And, you know, a lot of my teachers are saying, how do I grade these things online? And so I am really encouraging them to use rubrics. It allows for easy feedback. It makes the grading process faster, helps with that workflow. So I really encourage you, if you are working on teaching English online, to offer them rubrics. As far as teacher success, a couple of things I'm suggesting to my teachers, because we are all struggling with that stress of trying to figure out how to teach online at home. Crowder is entirely closed for the next couple of weeks, so I can't go to campus. My kids are home. My husband is still going to work. So some things I'm finding that some of the other instructors and I have talked about is set days to engage with your students. So I'm doing that on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm in the LMS. I'm building content, doing stuff like that with them, Zooming. And then on Monday, Wednesdays, those are my days to grade, to make videos, things like that. So just designate certain days that you're going to engage with your students, and then certain days where you're building content so that you just don't get burned out. One thing I keep telling people is you only have to stay 1 week ahead of your students, since typically online we do 1 week at a time. So just stay 1 week ahead of them. And we've all had to accept it won't be the same as face-to-face, and that's okay. Again, I encourage you to choose 1 or 2 tools and stick with them. I've had some instructors who are trying this thing and trying that thing, and just keep it really, really simple. Also remember, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. YouTube has all kinds of great things out there. TEDx is now TED Education is also putting lots of videos out there for educators to use, Khan Academy, things like that. So you don't always have to create your own content. There are lots of other things out there. My workflow for each week looks like this for my students. I post a video lesson on Monday when the next week opens. We spend the week in the discussion board where I'm giving them feedback, they're giving each other feedback, and then usually some kind of assignment is due at the end of the week. One thing I keep telling my students is this is going to be lather, rinse, repeat, that I want a rhythm to my class, and that seems to really help them know what to expect for the week, because many of my students, we have a very large nursing CNA program at Crowder, and many of my kids are, in nursing homes and in hospitals right now, and their hours are crazy, and so I'm trying to give them some flexibility in their week and, make sure that it's predictable. I am the dual credit lead instructor, and so one conversation we're having is, of course, internet connection. So I just shared this with my students, but Sprint and Verizon are offering mobile hotspots, free mobile hotspots if they have a smartphone that allows for that. So I'm encouraging them to reach out to their cell phone providers. Also, our area high schools are still providing Wi-Fi in the parking lots as well as our college campuses. And then our church is actually offering Wi-Fi in the parking lot. So there are options for kids who don't have great internet connection. But I was really happy to hear that Sprint and Verizon are offering, mobile tethering basically for kids for the next 60 days for free. So that's a little bit about teaching English online and some things that I've learned, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. And now we will move on to Barbie. Barbie Underwood is an associate professor of sociology at Moberly Area Community College. She serves as chair for the Math and Science Division as well as coordinator for the Psychology and Sociology Department. Barbie has taught for MAC for over 18 years. Barbie has her BA in psychology and her master's in social work, both from the University of Missouri-Columbia. Prior to coming to MAC, she worked for both state and nonprofit agencies, including the Children's Division, Prevent Child Abuse Missouri, and Rainbow House. I'll hand it over to Barbie now.
Thank you very much, Kaylin. So I am coming to you because I have had years of teaching both virtual, all three, virtual, online, and in seat. At Moberly Area Community College, whenever I was teaching in the early childhood program, we were one of the first schools to create or to use the virtual platform and synchronous learning. So it was quite the learning curve. Over the past 2 weeks at Moberly Area Community College, as we've been working to transition in-seat classes online, I have worked with many instructors from anatomy, zoology, health science, and sociology and psychology to move a lot of their content online and in very creative ways. So one of the things that have really come up is, why do we need discussion threads? What is the use of discussion threads? So the first, of course, number one, is the delivery of course content. I use my prompts, so kind of my discussion, to add on to a lot of the lecture or a lot of the information that I was going to be giving. Stephanie mentioned how TEDx is doing a lot of more academic-based, as well as they always have. So giving those short little clips, adding information to the content that you are trying to deliver that week is a great thing to do within the discussion thread. Have them view little YouTube clips, things like that. And then also ask the questions that you would want or that you would ask to start a class discussion. Using the discussion boards to create that or to still kind of build that community. Using open-end questions, which require in-depth reflection on the content, not like yes or no, do you agree, not agree, and why. And then I always ask my students to kind of support what they're saying, whether they are liking, they agree with something or they don't, or their thoughts, always supporting it back with the concepts that we are learning about within that unit. But the discussion board can offer so many other things. It's also very overwhelming, and that is one of the things that the instructors that I have worked with them have said. How often do I need to respond? I'm going to be doing assignments and tests and everything and trying to do Zoom meetings with my students, and I'm just feeling already overwhelmed. What about them? So I encourage both my students and the instructors that I've been working with to create a schedule and stick with it. Whether it is kind of, again, like what Stephanie said, setting aside Mondays and Wednesdays. Okay, these are the days that I'm going to respond to the discussion thread. Have a document or a file with some of your common responses so you can just copy and paste it in there. I find that that is really a great way to give feedback. And then I notice I can kind of see within the assignments they're common, where they're lacking in their understanding, and then I can post that. Allow some discussion to happen between the students without interrupting. I do that in the classroom, and I'm going to do that in my discussion boards also. So I let a little free flow going, and then I use my comments to either redirect their answers or usually to get the students thinking more in depth and providing like specific feedback, challenging them with my questions. Okay, this is your thought in here, but what if? Helping students to see other areas in there. I really, really like to use my discussion threads to continue the student-teacher relationship. We all have worked hard the first half of this semester to build those relationships in our classrooms, face-to-face with our students, and we don't want to lose that. Our students don't want to lose that. I mean, we keep hearing this from our students time and time again with it. So be yourself in replies. And even though you want to present a formal kind of dialogue or context, you can still use humor. You can still, okay, sorry, Stephanie, don't yell at me for this, but you don't necessarily use very proper grammar. Just be the presentation give the presentation that you would always give in the classroom with that. Use positive personal information that you know about the students to relate to the students, letting them know that, hey, I still connect with you. I still know that you're here. I still care about you. If you know where they work, say, how is this affecting your work, even within there, and then trying to connect some of that information to the content, again, like what we do in our classrooms face-to-face to build those relationships with our students. Also create a discussion thread for checking in or an online office. I think that is helpful, Again, Stephanie had said, I'm doing this. I'm on from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock on a certain night in the week just to kind of hang out and visit with the students. If you're not comfortable or knowing that some students do not have the internet capacity to do Zoom meetings, having that discussion board in there, and then, even having a specific time when you're there so you can respond to them live with it, I think will really help to continue our relationship with them that I think is so vital. Additional purposes, set a minimum post expectations each week in your discussion threads, whether it be 1, 2, or 3. Use this for a demonstration of, I'm not sure what I said there, but to have them show their content understanding. But also you can use it for attendance, and then again, create an online office. So I will turn it over now to Jack, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thanks so much. And to the attendees, please feel free to send us your questions in the Q&A box. Just keep the questions coming. Our fourth panelist is Jack Lee Hayes. Jack is the Chemistry Program Coordinator and Instructor for State Fair Community College. He has been teaching at State Fair for 15 years and teaching online with Lab for 10 years. Jack was 40 before he decided he wanted to be a higher ed chemistry teacher, and now he has had a digital classroom for 14 years. Jack has 2 master's degrees and prior to teaching spent 10 years running $1 million projects to clean up radioactive materials, was a guide in the Montana mountains, and was in the U.S. Navy Power Program. And so now we will start opening it up to the questions. Please feel free to type them in, and I will read them aloud, and then the presenters will take turns answering them. One question we have is, what is the typical workload for an online class? Can one of the presenters take that, please?
This is Barbie. So I think that the typical workload is going to vary from discipline to discipline. Labs that or disciplines that can present some content that or some assignments that are self-grading. For example, in sociology, my Gen Soc classes, I have all of my tests are multiple choice with maybe just a couple short answers. So then my LMS is able to grade those. I'm left with assignments and grading my discussion threads in there. One or two discussion threads can take probably like an hour to kind of reply to the discussion, keep it going in there. I try and show a presence in my classes like every 4 days or 4 out of the 7 days. It's something that I try and do with her. So those are my thoughts.
I'll just add to that, if it's a math or field, I think it's going to take a little longer because it is slower to grade things online than it is when somebody just hands you a paper, because you've either got to download that and mark it up and then upload it again, or you've got to use the built-in features of your LMS to leave comments on their work.
I'll jump in there. As far as English, honestly, building the content is not the difficult part. It's grading the papers online takes a lot more time. My English 102 students, right now, they're working on their 8 to 10 page research paper, and grading those is a significant portion of my time. General assignments, discussion boards, things like that might take me an hour. It's the papers that take me quite a bit of time, which is why I really suggest using rubrics, because it takes some of that time down because it makes giving feedback easier.
This is Jack. I'd like to add a little bit to that. I use Google Documents for my grading because that way I can put the feedback directly on it, and the students and I can have a discussion on those documents. The workload online is definitely greater than it is when you're face-to-face, and you can deal with multiple individuals, multiple students as a group instead of individually. So when you're making your assignments, you need to remember the time it takes you to grade, the time it takes them to submit, and sometimes even a little longer. So you have to keep that in mind as you're finishing out the rest of the spring semester.
Great. I'll move on to the next question. How do you identify and support struggling students?
This is Stephanie. I'll jump in on that question. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Okay. I try to encounter a dialogue early with my students so that I get a feel for their pattern and for their frequency of interaction. I'm actually starting brand new 8-week courses, so I don't have pre-existing knowledge of these individuals. So in the first 4 or 5 days, I really try to get simple things that there is no wrong answer so that I get them to start interacting with me. And then as it gets into the more complicated content and they have to build knowledge, it gives me something to compare to and say, okay, this person's slowing down. And initially I try to just contact them individually outside things where the rest of the class can see. And then I also use the institution's early warning systems. We call it Starfish, but we have navigators who will also help me interact with students and find out if there's a problem. And I'll ask them point blank, is there a problem with something besides the coursework? Maybe I can help. I've been around and done things for a few years. Thank you, Stephanie. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say about the same thing. We are an attendance-taking institution, so that honestly has helped keep track of my students. One thing I find online is it's easy to not notice who's struggling because you're not seeing them face-to-face and watching them turn in their assignments. So we still have to post attendance once a week, even going online. And so as soon as I take attendance, if I see that a student has been absent, I usually send them an email through the LMS. I'll be honest that I don't send it through our institutional email because not all of them are checking their institutional email, whereas a lot of them have gone into Blackboard and changed their Blackboard email to an email they actually check. So I'm sending it through the Blackboard email system, sending them an email trying to reach out to them. But other than that, I'm utilizing our advising center. We have what's called Crowder Cares, so I Crowder Cares them. And those people are, I call them the ninjas. They're just able to find those kids when I may not be able to. So reaching out to those other centers, and honestly, they want us to because they still want to connect with their students too. So I'll be honest that I'm putting some of that on our student affairs people and asking them for that help because I'm still trying to, make this transition myself. So that's one less thing, not that I don't have to worry about, but that I don't have to invest a lot of time in because honestly, they're better at it than I am. But I have found that taking attendance really makes me aware of the students who aren't participating in my class each week and getting to them before it gets too far.
Yeah, to add, this is Angela, to add to what Stephanie said, a lot of the online tools, you can search by who hasn't submitted and just send all of them an email, and it looks like it's going to each individual student, so they think you're emailing them individually. So just noticing when they're not turning in assignments, and just as soon as they're not turning stuff in, send them an email, hey, is everything okay? Just wanted to check on you. Students respond really well to that. I've had students say, I can't believe you took the time to reach out to me. And so it opens up some communication that way as well.
The final thing that I will add is that also you can use your course analytics. So over on the side, at least in Canvas, you can click on that, and then you can kind of see like how many times they've been, like the page views, turning in the assignments, whether they're turning them in late, things like that. So I would encourage you to explore and see what your course analytics will do also within the LMS.
Great. What is the most important first step I should take? I feel overwhelmed.
Stephanie here. What I have told my teachers across campuses, a lot of our off-campus sites, our teachers are adjuncts, and they don't necessarily teach in Blackboard very much. One thing I have told them is just build this week's folder. So in assignments, build that folder, put in the things that you already have, and then don't worry about next week till next week. And so I'm really trying to encourage people 1 week at a time. You only have to be, that couple of days ahead of your students. And so start with that assignments folder, put in there the stuff that you've already created, and then go from there. Maybe make a video, try maybe one thing to help you transition to online. But a lot of the things we already have, so just using, the things that we do have already, I think can be really helpful.
This is Barbie. I am similar to what I have offered in advice to, or similar to what Stephanie said, what I have offered in advice. The first thing that I say is breathe. And then the second thing is try and imagine what each week is, kind of jot that down, and then build that. So again, staying, week by week, do not get overwhelmed looking at the large picture. With it and putting the resources that you do have from your file up online as you go, and continue to breathe.
This is Jack, I've encouraged my colleagues and my students to to be willing to ask for help. Sometimes just formulating it as a question and you go, oh, wait, I know how to do that. But I've tried to encourage people to just find one question at a time, one task. It's a lot like what the rest of you have been saying, is a little bit at a time is generally the best choice.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. How are you staying in contact with the advisors when student attendance issues arise?
We're using email in our early alert system.
Yeah, same here. This is Stephanie. At Crowder, we have what's called Crowder Cares. It's just a link on our website, and I just go in and, it sends an email to my advising team, and then I usually receive some email back from them on their progress. We do have a lot of, TRIO programs and things like that on our campus, so then those get shuffled off to any of those programs that those students may be involved in, and then usually I hear something from an advisor and we kind of go from there. So I've already done probably 5 or 6 of those this week, and like I said, they're much better at finding those students than I am.
Okay, I will move on to the next question. If you were setting up your first online course, what format would you use?
This is Barbie. So what I have, again, encouraged some of the instructors that I've worked with who have not taught online before to do is reflect on what they would do each week and keeping it kind of simple, having lecture notes, PowerPoints that you would use available to the students, build that in there. Well, the very first thing, again, is like setting out the assignments for the week in there, building in the lecture notes, the PowerPoint, a discussion question, an assignment if you would give it over the content that week in the classroom, a test if you would give it that week. So that's kind of what I've been advising.
Well, I think that question is different if you're designing an online course. Sorry.
No, go ahead, dear.
If you're designing an online course from the get-go, then that's a very different question. I think right now, if you are normally giving assignments out of the book, then you just post, hey, do these problems, and then your job is to figure out how am I going to use a discussion board to talk about that? Am I going to post solutions? Am I going to work some in a video? What I would recommend not doing is going and finding best practices for building an online course and trying to do everything that's listed, because we just simply don't have time to do that right now. Just one thing at a time and as simple as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. The first thing I told my group to do was just, go in assignments, make that first weekly folder. I encourage them then on the, where you write in the description for what that folder is. So under week 9 folder, what is it you want them to do that week? Then work on building it, and you can even keep building it as you go. And maybe this, the first week, all you do is put in the PowerPoint you already had, build that assessment you're going to do, and then create a discussion board. And then that gives you a little bit of lead time so that the next week maybe you could try to make a video, or maybe you could try to set up some Zoom time. So you don't have to do it all the first week. Your students are still trying to figure it out too. And so, maybe do it, just give yourself some lead time during the week, and so then you can, focus on maybe adding something else next week once you kind of figure out a flow.
I'd like to add to that. This is Jack again. First, we're not building online for most of you are just doing alternate delivery. But you probably have colleagues on campus who have been working online. So maybe go and ask them, how would you do this kind of an assignment? I strongly encourage people to use the strengths of their LMS, the parts that they understand. But yeah, trying to, as was previously said, you're not trying to build a brand new online course from scratch, at least not right now.
Okay, our next question isn't really a question, it's a comment. I love your ideas of connecting with the students on a personal level. I agree. I think that's a great idea. I would have loved to have my professor take me on a tour of their house when I was in school. I think that's a great idea. And next question, are any tips for hands-on learning classrooms?
I guess I'll jump on that one. This is Jack. I've been teaching chemistry online for almost 10 years now, and my class is very much hands-on. Content isn't delivered by lecture. Content's delivered by conducting labs and then talking about your observations. So for me, for hands-on, that is the only way to teach science. I've had to get imaginative and creative on the types of things that they might have in their household so that they can experience the phenomenon and then develop the questions and the queries and build defensible claims. But if you naturally teach a hands-on class, you just need to slow yourself down, take a breath, as has been mentioned, and think about, okay, how would I do this if somebody walked in my house today? I didn't have time to go grab a bunch of stuff. How could I present this idea or topic? And you'll find that if you slow yourself down, think about your discipline, you'll probably find ways to do it hands-on that maybe hadn't occurred to you in the past, but now under the stress of a new normal, you can find some resources. And then again, ask other people. If we see farther, it's because we're standing on the shoulders of giants. So ask people how they've been doing it. And it's good to have a specific question. Not a general, well, I want to be hands-on, but how would I teach ionic precipitation? I'm sorry, I'm going to diverge to my field, but, pick a specific, one step at a time, and I think you'll discover hands-on is very much doable with alternative delivery.
Yeah, Stephanie here. I would also really encourage you to use the discussion board to do that. As long as your students have a smartphone, they have the ability to record themselves doing just about anything, and they can upload those to the discussion board. We have a speech teacher who's doing that right now, where they're having to, just upload a really quick speech for that first 8 or that second 8 weeks class. And it's in the discussion board, and the students are loving it because they get to comment and see each other. So, there are still ways to have that hands-on experience just with the power of a discussion board and, the camera on or the video, capabilities on their phone. So, there are simple ways that they can still show you their learning even online.
This is a side note to that conversation. I just wanted to remind people, if you're having them send videos and things like that, make sure you do it through your LMS. Don't have them sending all that stuff to your email, or it's going to bog down your email.
The other thing that I have been saying, so I had one instructor that I was working with, and she is an adjunct, and she was entering into the part of class on biofeedback. And so my comment to her was, you're going to have to think out of the box. She's like, I don't have, how am I going to put the instruments in their hand to check the pulse through their pulsometer or their fingers and things like that. I'm like, have them record and think out of the box. And so it really did. It was very difficult for her, and she's not there yet, and we don't start back to our instruction until this coming Monday. But thinking out of the box, okay, how can I make this work in there? And sometimes you're going to have to let go of what you would do in the classroom and then try and find other ways to replicate it or give them similar experiences, is what I've shared with her.
Here's the next question. Is it wise to copy another instructor's course?
You can do that in a pinch if you have never taught online and an instructor is willing to do that for you. We did that for somebody who we hired, a couple days before school was supposed to start. We had an instructor get really sick, and so she course copied a course that I've taught for years over for her just to get her going. But honestly, she said she really struggled with it, and she ended up deleting most of my stuff and creating her own because we all teach very differently. And, they were my lecture videos, and she wanted them to see that she wanted our students to see her face. So it can work in a pinch. One thing we have done in our division is shared some of our quizzes and tests, just so we're not reinventing the wheel in that area, because creating quizzes and tests in Blackboard is somewhat time consuming. But other than that, a lot of the content she actually didn't like course copying, so she ended up deleting a lot of it.
One thing we've done is we've offered copies of our online courses for people. But what we're doing is our administration is setting up just like a demo shell where the instructor can get in and see what they want, and then they can pull in what they want to their live course. I wouldn't recommend just dumping stuff in your live course until you've had a chance to look through it and see what's going to work for you.
The next question is, she would like to ask for recommendations on how to handle students with accommodations who require extra time. Are there exceptions on services? And hand in hand with that, and one of the presenters did touch on this, but is setting time frames for testing a good idea? Two-part question.
So I was the one who talked about time limits on testing, so I guess I'll start. I can set time limits for the class as a whole, and then I can adjust time limits for individual students. So anybody that has just extended time accommodations, I can handle that way. If they need extra equipment, I don't have anybody in my classes right now that needs any kind of extra equipment like screen readers or anything like that, so I don't know an answer to that question. I think whether time limits on tests are a good idea, I think maybe depends on the subject. For instance, when I teach Calc 1, those students need to be prepared for Calc 2. So I need to know that they can do the work in a timely manner and that they're not Googling all the answers. If it's a more discussion, opinion-based course, then maybe you don't need time limits. So I think that's really a content answer, depending on the content you teach. I feel like if I can't proctor my students, then I have to require some kind of time limit. I usually try to make that reasonable because I don't want them to feel rushed, but I don't want them to be able to just go wherever and get any help they want.
This is Barbie.
This is Jack.
Our ADA, sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
I'm sorry, Barbie, I muted. I was going to let you go. Anyway, a couple of things I wanted to add is I would encourage you to talk to your access coordinator and work with them. Time limits can be adjusted, as was mentioned earlier. And then the last thing, I learned the hard way in Canvas, if I don't put a time limit on, students can get bounced out with the internet, and then I can't turn it off and give them a second attempt, even if I want to, until the test is expired. So I've gone putting time limits on everything. Sometimes it's really long, but I found out that my administrators and I can't turn a test off. If the students get bounced out, they get told, well, this test is already in progress. And so it was really frustrating for my students when we found that little glitch. So I encourage you to put some kind of a time limit on it for no other reason that if you and the administrators can't turn the test off, you can still give the student a second attempt later.
And Jack, you said what I was going to say in regards to your Access office. I know that our Access office has reached out to all of their students who have been in seat and encouraged them to, and they've talked to them about what are your needs, and then encourage the students to contact their instructors if they think that they're going to have some other needs beyond what is in the classroom.
Stephanie here. I'll also throw in, don't forget about your content as well, not just assessment. You know, making sure that the content you provide, your lecture videos and things like that, I try to run everything through YouTube because then it does create transcribes my videos. So I need to do that for one of my students. If you don't have any students in your class who have that need, then, you know, maybe don't worry about it at this point. But I do have one. I also have one student who needs things in a very large font, so I do email her those things individually. So, you know, just consider not only your assessments, but also your content.
Okay, that is all the questions we have for today. I want to thank you all for joining us, and a huge thank you to our presenters. They jumped in on this opportunity to share their expertise, and they worked really quickly with us to get this webinar out today. We will be sending a recording of today's webinar to everyone that registered via email, so be looking for that. And I do believe they will also be up on our website if you follow the coronavirus banner on our website. You can learn more about our webinar series on our website, mccatoday.org, and click on the coronavirus banner at the top of the page. Feel free to share these webinars with anyone and everyone. We are offering them complimentary and open to the public. We are developing these in real time, so there will be changes. Please check in on that website often. And of course, we will also send out notifications. Our next session will be on Monday at Tech Tools and Resources at 2:15. And some of our valuable partners are connecting with us and sharing their resources. Some of these are completely free at this time. Please connect with us if there's any other way we can serve you during this time. We have also created an online forum you can access through your member portal. You can share and gain useful resources during this time. I just shared some resources this morning on that forum. Again, you can share today's experience on social using hashtags MCCA webinar, Better Together, and COVID-19. Thank you to everyone once again. Thank you to the presenters, and have a great day.